The Ottoman Empire's economic downfall in the final years of the Ottoman Empire. The Sultan's palace gleamed with the same golden mosaics that had once symbolized divine authority and imperial power. Yet, behind those marble halls, the empire's finances were in shambles. The Ottoman treasury, once overflowing with the spoils of conquest, was now little more than a hollow vault of unpaid debts, inflated currency, and desperate reforms. The empire that had dominated 3 continents for centuries was dying, not from swords or cannons, but from compound interest, corruption, and the inability to adapt to a modern world shaped by capitalism and industrial might. It's easy to imagine the Ottoman decline as a military story: lost wars, shrinking borders, and the slow decay of power. But the real story is far more intricate. It's an economic tragedy, a case study of how a once dominant empire, built on conquest and tribute, collapsed under the weight of its own outdated systems and the rising dominance of European finance. At its height in the 16th century, the Ottoman Empire was one of the richest political entities on earth. Its territory stretched from Hungary to Yemen, from Algeria to the Persian Gulf. Control over key trade routes, the Silk Road, the spice trade through the Red Sea, and the Bosporus Straits made the empire the commercial heart of Eurasia. Wealth flowed into Istanbul through taxes, land rents, and tribute from vassal states. The Ottomans didn't need to innovate economically. They simply collected what others produced. Their system, based on land revenue and monopolies, was remarkably stable as long as expansion continued. Conquest fueled the treasury, which funded the army, which enabled more conquest. But like any Ponzi scheme of imperial grandeur, it relied on perpetual growth. When territorial expansion stopped, so did the inflow of wealth. And that's exactly what happened after the 17th century. The empire's borders hardened. The conquests slowed. The revenue engine began to sputter. The Ottoman economy was agrarian to its core. Peasants worked land owned by the state and paid taxes through intermediaries, a system known as the timur. This feudal-like arrangement worked in a pre-modern world. But as Europe transitioned toward mercantile capitalism and early industrialization, the Ottoman economy remained trapped in medieval rigidity. The empire's wealth was vast, but it was not liquid. It could not easily be reinvested or expanded. The bureaucracy was powerful, but economically static. While London and Amsterdam were becoming financial hubs with stock exchanges and private banks, Istanbul remained dependent on traditional taxes and religious endowments. In short, the Ottomans had power, but not productivity. By the 18th century, the world economy had fundamentally changed. European nations, especially Britain, France, and the Netherlands, were no longer merely trading spices or silks. They were industrializing, building financial systems that could fund massive wars and projects through credit, bonds, and global trade networks. The Ottomans, meanwhile, clung to silver coins, local guilds, and a rigid system of state monopolies. Their empire was geographically vast but economically inefficient. It lacked the infrastructure to support modern commerce, and corruption seeped through every level of administration. Inflation became chronic. Wars against Austria, Russia, and Persia drained the treasury. The cost of maintaining a massive standing army, one that was technologically obsolete compared to Europe's, became unbearable. To compensate, the state debased its currency, printing coins with lower silver content. Prices rose. Confidence in the Ottoman lira eroded. By the late 1700s, the empire was effectively caught in a spiral: inflation, corruption, deficit, repeat. But the real catastrophe came in the 19th century, when the Ottomans tried to modernize. In the 1800s, the Ottoman Empire launched the Tanzimat reforms, a sweeping attempt to westernize its military, bureaucracy, and economy. On paper, it was a brilliant move. The empire would adopt European-style education, build railroads, reform taxes, and modernize its army. In practice, it was a financial disaster. Modernization required money, and the Ottomans didn't have any, so they borrowed. Heavily at first. Loans came from European banks, eager to profit from a great empire's recovery. London and Paris financiers offered generous credit to the Sublime Porte. The Ottoman government in Istanbul. The interest rates were steep but manageable as long as the empire kept borrowing. Between 1854 and 1874, the Ottoman Empire took on over a dozen major loans, totaling hundreds of millions of gold francs. But instead of using them to build sustainable industries, much of the money went to military spending, bureaucratic salaries, and the lavish lifestyle of the elite. A significant portion was lost to corruption and inefficiency. By the time the empire realized the depth of its financial trap, it was too late. The interest payments alone consumed a massive portion of state revenue. The final blow came after the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 1878. The war devastated the treasury. By 1875, the Ottoman Empire declared bankruptcy. It defaulted on its foreign debt, the second major empire in the 19th century to do so, after Egypt. The Europeans responded by taking direct control. In 1881, they established the Ottoman Public Debt Administration, a foreign-run institution that managed the empire's taxes and customs revenues to ensure European creditors were repaid. In essence, the empire had lost its economic sovereignty. The Sultan was still on the throne, but the empire's finances were controlled from Paris and London. It was colonialism by another name, financial imperialism. The Ottoman economy in the late 19th century became increasingly dependent on European capital and imports. Local industries, unable to compete with cheap European goods, collapsed. Textiles from Manchester flooded Ottoman markets, destroying traditional weaving guilds in Anatolia and the Balkans. Meanwhile, the empire's infrastructure, railways, ports, and telegraphs, though impressive, were mostly foreign-owned and operated. Even the revenue from tobacco, salt, and alcohol went directly to European creditors through the debt administration. The empire had effectively mortgaged its future. By the turn of the 20th century, the Ottoman budget was a grim reflection of its decline. Around one-third of state revenue went directly to debt service. Another third went to the military. The rest barely covered administration. There was almost nothing left for education, healthcare, or development. The Ottoman state had become a fiscal husk, maintaining the illusion of sovereignty, while bleeding wealth through its financial arteries. This dependency eroded not only the economy, but also the political legitimacy of the Sultanate. Reformers and revolutionaries pointed to the empire's financial humiliation as proof that the old regime was unfit to rule. By the time World War I erupted, the Ottoman Empire was a shadow of its former self. Its alliances were driven not by strategy but by desperation, a hope that aligning with Germany might restore its fortunes. But the war only accelerated the inevitable. The empire's infrastructure was destroyed, its trade routes severed, and its treasury drained once again. When the armistice came in 1918, the Ottoman state was bankrupt financially, militarily, and morally. The collapse of the Ottoman Empire wasn't just a story of lost wars or political corruption. It was the story of how an empire failed to transition from a pre-modern tributary system to a modern capitalist economy. It's a lesson that echoes far beyond history. That wealth built on conquest and land can only last so long before the logic of markets and money takes over. In the end, the Ottomans' downfall was not caused by foreign invaders or internal conspiracies, but by something far more fundamental: economic stagnation in an age of global transformation. When the Republic of Turkey emerged from the ashes in 1923, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk understood that truth better than anyone. His reforms, secularization, industrialization, central banking, education were, in many ways, a direct response to the financial failures of the empire that came before. The Ottoman Empire's economic downfall was not just the end of an age. It was the beginning of the modern Middle East, a region still living in the long shadow of an empire that could conquer half the world, but not its own debts.